Welcome in from Ringside Report Radio, Wednesdays and Fridays here on TSN 690 at 11 o'clock. Also, the website ringsidereport.net, and you can follow him on twitter.com/DaveSimonMMA. What's up, Dave?
Yes. UFC on Fuel TV 5 going down yesterday afternoon. I love Saturday afternoon MMA. From Nottingham, England, I get to watch it. Saturday.
Big venue, or?
Yeah, not a huge venue. The Capital FM Arena or something. I don't know what it was called. Nottingham. Good fight in the main event. Stefan Struve knocking out Stipe Miocic, giving Stipe his first ever professional loss. That was one hell of a heavyweight main event. Stefan Struve improving to 25 wins and 5 losses. 9-3 now in the UFC. He looked very, very good. The 7-footer really using his range and showing some power as well to knock out Stipe Miocic. It was a war from start to finish as Stipe, a Golden Gloves boxing champion, was tagging Struve with a bunch of shots, but Struve was able to hang on. His chin ate those big shots, and he was able to keep on going and get the knockout of Stipe, who also took some big shots, but eventually was worn down and knocked out. A pretty awesome fight in the main event yesterday.
In terms of where the venue was, did they have any local content?
Yeah, of course. Nottingham's own Dan Hardy, Dan the Outlaw Hardy, who once faced George St. Pierre for the UFC welterweight championship. He is from Nottingham. He actually walked to the arena. That's how close he lives to the building. He got a decision victory in the co-main event over Amir Sadallah. Hardy out-wrestling and using some ground and pound to clearly win rounds 2 and 3 in that fight.
Was this a credible opponent?
Amir Sadallah? Yeah, definitely. I think it was a good matchup. It was a matchup that made sense. Dan Hardy was the favorite, but it wasn't some sort of heavy favorite. It wasn't ridiculous. It made sense, and Hardy came in and got a big win. And, it was the first time he'd won 2 in a row in a long time, as he won his last fight against Dwayne Ludwig, but before that, he had lost 4 in a row. So now Hardy getting back on the winning side of things with a win over Amir Sadallah in the co-main event. Brad Pickett was also from England. He got a win over Montreal's own Yves, the Tiger Jabouin. He knocked out Yves in the first round. And there were a bunch of other English fighters on this card. Tom Watson was on the card, Andy Ogle, Jason Young. A lot of English fighters representing. Che Mills got a victory over Dwayne Ludwig with a TKO in the first round. I mentioned Andy Ogle. He lost to Akira Corsani. I thought Ogle won that fight via decision, but he lost a split decision there. So, good afternoon of fights yesterday in England. And
how will we know about the ratings? Do they release this kind of stuff?
No, not really. They don't really release the ratings. You can find out. There are ways to figure that out. Usually the UFC does pretty well. Ratings-wise, it should be interesting to see how they did in the afternoon on Fuel TV, but I'm assuming people were watching. What else are you going to do on a Saturday afternoon? But watch fights. It's a good time. That's what I was doing.
I could do a few other things, but I will
what else are you doing, Stefano? Let's get real. You're either watching this or you're watching the Alouettes or whatever. Come on.
Well, there was one interesting tidbit of this week. There was the press conference this week for UFC 154 with George St. Pierre and Carlos Condit headlining that. I know you were at that, Dave, and I'm just wondering if there's anything interesting that came up from that.
Yeah, well, Condit and George St. Pierre, I think, said what they're going to say. They're going to say, I'm looking to fight, and they're going to say, this is my toughest opponent. But I think the most interesting thing came out of the Director of Operations for UFC Canada, Tom Wright. He said that the UFC will be returning to Montreal in the third week of March in 2013. So we're going to get another show. So 2 UFC shows in 5 months. Of course, November 17th. That's why we had the press conference on Thursday morning. It's because the tickets were on sale starting, I think it was Thursday morning for the Fight Club members, Friday morning for the newsletter members, and then Saturday morning for the general public. So tickets are now on sale for UFC 154, November 17th. I understand most of them are gone at this point. I think there are a few that you can still get, but a near sellout right now, and I'm expecting it to sell out very soon. I mean, who's going to want to pass up seeing George St. Pierre versus Carlos Condit? The return of GSP. He hasn't fought since April of 2011 when he sold out the Rogers Center in Toronto in front of 50,000 plus to beat Jake Shields. Now he returns to face the interim champion Carlos Condit after suffering that knee injury. He has knee surgery, and he comes back, and he does it at home. So it was good to see George St. Pierre, good to see Carlos Condit as well, who took time away from his training. He actually showed up on Wednesday night from Albuquerque, New Mexico, flew in, did the press conference, and was leaving Montreal right after everything was done on Thursday afternoon. So he was in and out for that press conference. He's got to get back to Albuquerque, back to his training.
Now, Dave, obviously the press conference is used to get a little bit of coverage for the event, hype it a little bit. Some fighters are outlandish. Some fighters try and add to the coffers, if you will, by making some bold statements or taunting the opponent, that kind of stuff. What were these two guys like that day?
They're both very respectful. I mean, you know George St. Pierre. He's a very respectful guy. Carlos Condit is the same way. Very respectful, very quiet. In fact, they were asked about that, having to deal with trash talk in the past. Is it tough to get motivated for a fight where your opponent isn't talking trash to you? And they both said no. The fight sells itself. These are the two best welterweights in the world. You've got the champion returning from injury at home. You've got the interim champion in the biggest fight of his life. This is the best welterweight fight you could put on right now. George St. Pierre, Carlos Condit. The fight sells itself. No trash talk. They're both very respectful. I mean, they share a coach in Greg Jackson. The guy that corners them in most of their fights, Greg Jackson, will not be cornering them in their upcoming fight. But, they have a lot of the same friends. They train with a lot of the same people. They respect each other. And that's what we see mostly in mixed martial arts. A lot of respect, not a lot of trash talk, and that's what you get out of George St. Pierre. And that's what you get out of Carlos Condit, two classy guys.